Squadron leader Hyun-woo stood in the briefing room, watching the tactical display show another perfect victory. 300 enemy ships turned into floating scrap metal in just 47 minutes. The numbers glowed green on his screen, each digit representing another alien vessel that would never threaten human space again. His pilots sat around the metal table, still wearing their flight suits. Junho cleaned his helmet visor with careful movements. Min-soo updated his kill count. In the squadron logbook, So-young reviewed the mission data, looking for ways they could have been even faster, even more deadly. The Ghost Talons had earned their reputation through blood and precision. Every pilot knew their role perfectly. Every attack run followed the same flawless pattern. They moved like parts of one giant machine, each fighter exactly where it needed to be, exactly when it needed to be there. The Vorthon never knew what hit them, Junho said, his voice calm and professional. He had personally destroyed 17 enemy fighters during the battle. The Vorthon Empire had sent their best fleet to break through human defenses. Their ships were fast and well-armed. Their pilots had trained for years to fight humans. None of it mattered. The Ghost Talons had torn through them like paper. Command wants to see our after-action report by 0800 tomorrow, Hyun-woo told his team. Make sure all weapon systems are checked and ready. Intelligence says the Zephyrians might try something stupid next week. The pilots began filing out of the briefing room. They would eat dinner, sleep for exactly 8 hours, then wake up, ready to kill more aliens. It was a routine that had worked perfectly for 2 years of war. So-young paused at the door. Did you hear about the replacement pilot? Hyun-woo looked up from his reports. Replacement for what? For Ji-hoon's position. Command is sending someone tomorrow. Ji-hoon had been their 5th pilot until the Kepler offensive. He had died ramming his damaged fighter into an alien dreadnought, saving a civilian transport with 3,000 people aboard. The Ghost Talons had flown with for pilots ever since, waiting for Command to find someone good enough to join their elite squadron. About time, Min-soo said. Could use another gun when the big fleets show up. Hyun-woo felt satisfied. And Command had finally found them a proper pilot. Someone trained at the military academy, someone who understood tactics and formations, someone who could keep up with the Ghost Talons and their deadly precision. The next morning, Hyun-woo waited at the landing bay to meet their new squadron member. A transport shuttle settled onto the deck with a soft hiss of engines. The cargo door opened, and Hyun-woo expected to see a sharp military pilot step out, ready for duty. Instead, a young man stumbled down the ramp, carrying a large duffel bag, and what looked like a bag of snacks. His flight suit was too big for his thin frame, and he kept adjusting the sleeves as he walked. He looked around the landing bay with wide, curious eyes, like he had never seen a military base before. "Are you pilot Tae-hyun?" "Yes, sir," Tae-hyun replied, giving a sloppy salute with his free hand. "Sorry I'm late. The transport pilot let me sit up front, and we saw this really cool asteroid field on the way here. I took some pictures. This could not be their new pilot. This looked like someone who had gotten lost on his way to a civilian job." "What is your combat experience, pilot?" Hyun-woo asked, trying to keep his voice professional. Tae-hyun opened his bag of snacks and pulled out what looked like honey butter. "Chips. Combat experience? Well, I flew cargo runs for 3 years, mostly between mining stations and orbital platforms. I got pretty good at avoiding space debris and pirates." "Pirates," Hyun-woo repeated slowly. "Oh yeah, they show up sometimes on the trade routes, usually just small ships looking for easy targets. I learned to fly really unpredictable patterns so they would get confused and give up." Tae-hyun crunched. "On a chip? These are really good. Want one?" Hyun-woo did not want a chip. He wanted a real pilot. Someone who had trained to fight aliens, not avoid pirates while delivering mining equipment. The rest of the Ghost Talons arrived to meet their new squadron member. Junho took one look at Tae-hyun and raised an eyebrow. Min-soo shook his head in disbelief. So-young tried to hide a smile, but Hyun-woo could tell she found the situation amusing. "This is our new pilot," Hyun-woo announced, his voice tight with control. "Pilot Tae-hyun will be flying as Ghost 5. Nice to meet everyone," Tae-hyun said cheerfully. "I brought snacks for the whole squadron. I read that sharing food helps build team unity." He pulled several bags from his duffel and started handing them out. Rice crackers for Junho, sweet potato chips for Minsu, seaweed snacks for Sol Young. Each pilot took their bag with expressions of complete bewilderment. "Hey, we don't usually eat during missions," So Young explained gently. "Oh, that's okay," Taehan replied. "I just like having something to munch on when I fly. Helps me think better. Plus, long flights get boring without snacks." Wu felt a headache starting behind his eyes. The Ghost Talons were the most elite fighter squadron in human space. They followed orders without question and executed complex battle plans with perfect timing. Now Command had sent them a cargo pilot who thought missions were boring and wanted to share snacks. "We'll start your orientation tomorrow," Wu said. "Report to the simulator bay at 0600. We'll see how you handle our standard formations." "Sounds great," Taehan said, stuffing his snack bags back into his duffel. "I'm really excited to learn from you guys. I heard the Ghost Talons are the best pilots in the fleet." At least he had done his research. Maybe there was hope for him after all that evening. No formal combat training, no military academy education, no decorations or commendations. Just a clean safety record and a note that he had never lost a cargo shipment. Even on dangerous routes, the war was going too well for mistakes like this. The aliens were getting desperate, which made them dangerous. Not a snack-loving cargo pilot who took pictures of asteroid fields, but orders were orders. Taehan would fly with them until Command realized their mistake and sent a proper replacement. The stars looked peaceful and distant. Somewhere out there, alien fleets were planning their next attack. The Ghost Talons would be ready for them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, and hopefully a way to turn their cheerful cargo pilot into something resembling a real fighter. He had no idea that everything was about to change. 3 days passed like a strange dream for the Ghost Talons. Taehan attended every briefing, but he spent most of his time drawing little cartoon aliens in the margins of his mission notes. When Wu explained attack formations, Taehan nodded politely while eating crackers. When Sol Young reviewed enemy ship capabilities, Taehan asked if the alien weapons looked like the blasters in old movies. The simulator sessions were even worse. Taehan could fly his fighter well enough, but he completely ignored formation protocols. He would drift away from the group to look at interesting space phenomena, or suddenly change direction because he thought he saw something unusual on his sensors. "He flies like a tourist," Junho complained after their third training session. "Like he's sightseeing instead of preparing for combat." Minsu shook his head in frustration. "Yesterday he asked me if we could stop by that nebula over there because the colors looked pretty, in the middle of a tactical exercise." Wu tried to remain patient. Every pilot had different learning styles. Maybe Taehan just needed more time to understand military discipline. But deep down, he worried about what would happen when they faced real enemies. The answer came sooner than expected. Alert klaxons woke the entire base at 0530 hours. Wu rolled out of his bunk and grabbed his flight suit, muscle memory taking over. Emergency scramble meant enemy contact. Enemy contact meant the Ghost Talons had work to do. The briefing room buzzed with controlled energy. Intelligence Officer Park stood at the tactical display, pointing to a cluster of red dots moving toward human space. "Zephyrian Reconnaissance Force," Park announced. 12 light cruisers, standard probe formation. They're testing our defenses. In the Kepler system, Command wants them eliminated before they can report back to their fleet. Wu studied the enemy formation. 12 ships was barely worth the fuel to launch fighters, but reconnaissance missions were important to stop. If the Zephyrians learned too much about human defenses, they might launch a larger attack. "Standard intercept pattern," Wu told his pilots. "We'll hit them fast and clean, then return to base. Ghost 5, you'll follow our lead and observe. Do not break formation without orders." Taehan raised his hand. "What if I see something interesting?" "No. You ignore it and stay in formation," Wu replied firmly. "This is not a cargo run. These aliens will shoot back." "Got it," Taehan said, pulling a bag of seaweed crackers from his pocket.
Stay close.
"Shoot bad guys, Don't wander off. 5 minutes later, the Ghost Talons launched into space. Their fighters moved in perfect diamond formation, engines synchronized, weapons ready. Haiyan Wu felt the familiar calm that came with combat preparation. This was what they trained for, what they were built for. Haiyan's fighter trailed slightly behind the formation, wobbling a bit as he adjusted his controls. Haiyan Wu could hear him crunching on crackers over the CUM system. Ghost 5, maintain radio discipline, Haiyan Wu ordered. Sorry, sir, Haiyan replied. These crackers are really loud. I'll try to chew quieter. The enemy ships appeared on their tactical displays as they approached the intercept point. 12 Zephyrian cruisers in a standard scouting formation, their blue hulls gleaming against the starfield. Intelligence was right about their numbers and positioning. All units prepare for engagement, Haiyan Wu commanded. Ghost 2, take the forward escorts. Ghost 3 and 4, flank right and engage the command cluster. Ghost 5, maintain position and follow our lead. Copy that, Ghost Leader. Came the professional responses from his veteran pilots. Copy that, Ghost Leader, Haiyan added. Just gonna finish these crackers real quick, and then... Oh wow, look at that. Before anyone could ask what he was looking at, Haiyan's fighter suddenly accelerated away from the formation. His ship banked hard to starboard, heading toward what appeared to be completely empty space. Ghost 5, return to formation immediately, Haiyan Wu ordered, his voice sharp with command authority. The kid's lost his mind, Junho muttered over. The CUM? He's flying straight into nothing. Haiyan, there are no targets in that sector, Soyoung called out. Come back to the group. But Haiyan kept flying toward empty space, his fighter moving in the lazy, unpredictable pattern they had seen during training. Minsu cursed over the CUM channel. He's going to get himself killed in the first 30 seconds. Haiyan Wu watched, his tactical display with growing anger. Their perfect formation was broken. Their newest pilot was flying toward empty space like a confused civilian. The Zephyrian ships were getting closer. And now the Ghost Talons were down one fighter because their cargo pilot couldn't follow simple orders? Then something impossible happened. Haiyan's fighter launched, full missile barrage into the empty space ahead of him. 6 missiles streaked away from his ship, their exhaust trails bright against the darkness. For a moment, nothing happened. The missiles seemed to disappear into the void. Then a massive explosion lit up the starfield, where there had been empty space. A huge Zephyrian dreadnought suddenly became visible. The ship was easily 10 times larger than the cruisers they had come to fight. Its hull was scarred and burning from Haiyan's missile strike. Atmosphere vented from dozens of holes in its armor. How did you see that? Soyoung gasped over the CUM. The dust patterns looked weird. Haiyan replied casually, as if detecting invisible battleships was something he did every day. Plus, I used to work quality control on the assembly lines. You learn to spot things that don't belong. The cloaked dreadnought had been completely invisible to their sensors. It should have waited until the Ghost Talons engaged the smaller ships, then attacked them from behind with overwhelming firepower. Instead, it was now a dying wreck. Its engines offline and weapon systems destroyed. The remaining Zephyrian cruisers seemed as shocked as the human pilots. Their perfect ambush had been ruined by a cargo pilot eating crackers. Without their command ship and its master tactician, the alien formation fell apart. Some ships tried to flee. Others attempted desperate attack runs against the Ghost Talons. A few simply drifted in space, their crews apparently too confused to react. Haiyan Wu and his pilots destroyed the remaining enemy vessels in less than 10 minutes. It was hardly even a battle. Aliens were so disorganized that they barely managed to return fire. As they flew back toward base, Haiyan Wu stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 12 enemy cruisers destroyed. 1 massive dreadnought eliminated. 0 human casualties. Mission accomplished in record time. All because their snack-loving cargo pilot had noticed that cosmic dust was moving in a strange pattern. Ghost 5, Haiyan Wu, called over the CUM. How exactly did you know there was a cloaked ship there? The dust particles were curving around something invisible, Haiyan explained between bites of his crackers. Like when you have a bad conveyor. belt that nobody can see, but the products coming off it are all slightly bent in the same direction. Same principle, just with space dust instead of manufactured goods. Hyan Wu had no idea how to respond to that. In 2 years of combat, he had never heard anyone compare space battles to factory work, but somehow it had worked perfectly. News of the snack incident spread through the fleet faster than hyperspace communications. Within hours, every pilot in the sector had heard about the cargo driver, who spotted an invisible battleship while eating crackers. Some thought it was a joke. Others called it impossible luck. A few wondered if there was something more to the story. Admiral Chang was not interested in jokes or luck. She summoned squadron leader Hyan Wu to her flagship for a personal briefing. The meeting took place in her private office, a small room lined with tactical displays and battle honors from 30 years of service. "Explain to me how this happened," Admiral Chang said, her voice calm but intense.
"Oh!"
"Did a civilian pilot detect a stealth capital ship that fooled our entire sensor array?" Hyan Wu had been asking himself the same question for the past day. According to Taehyun, he noticed cosmic dust particles moving in unusual patterns. He says the dust was curving around something invisible. "Cosmic dust," the Admiral repeated slowly. "Yes, ma'am." He compared it to spotting defective products on factory assembly lines. He used to work quality control before joining the merchant. Marine Admiral Chang studied Taehyun's service record on her desk display. Born on New Seoul, an industrial world known for manufacturing spacecraft components. 15 years working in various factories before becoming a cargo pilot.
No formal.
Education beyond technical school. No military background whatsoever. His psychological profile shows high spatial awareness and pattern recognition skills, she noted. The kind of abilities that would be useful for spotting manufacturing defects or invisible alien battleships. Apparently, Hyan Wu added. Admiral made her decision quickly. "Keep him flying with your squadron. But I want someone monitoring his methods. We need to understand how his mind works." 2 days later, pilot officer Yoon-ji arrived at the Ghost Talon's base. She was a former xenobiology researcher who had joined the military intelligence division after the war began. Her job was to study alien behavior patterns and predict enemy tactics. "I'm here to observe pilot Taehyun," she explained to Hyan Wu during their first meeting. "Command wants to know if his detection methods can be taught to other pilots." Hyan Wu assigned her to the squadron as their intelligence specialist. She would fly in the command ship during missions, analyzing data and providing tactical support. More importantly, she would watch Taehyun and try to figure out how he saw things that trained. Military pilots missed. Her first chance came during their next combat mission. The target was a group of Krillian raiders attacking merchant shipping. Near the Vega system, intelligence reported 6 fast attack ships using hit-and-run tactics against cargo convoys. Standard pirates, nothing the Ghost Talons couldn't handle easily. Taehyun sat in the mission briefing, sharing a bag of rice crackers while studying the tactical display. The enemy ships appeared as red dots moving in formation through the shipping lanes. "Something's wrong with this picture," Taehyun said suddenly. Hyan Wu looked up from his battle plan. "What do you mean? These ships aren't flying like pirates," Taehyun explained, crunching on a cracker. "Look at their formation. They're moving like cargo haulers, not raiders. No, too organized, too predictable." Yoon-ji leaned forward with interest. "Can you explain what you're seeing?" Taehyun pointed at the display with a cracker. "See how they're maintaining steady intervals between ships? That's convoy spacing. Pirates don't do that because it makes them easy targets. And look at their course changes. Too gentle, too planned, like they're trying to save fuel." "Save fuel," Yoon-ji repeated, making notes on her tablet. "Yeah, when I flew cargo runs, we always had to watch our fuel consumption. These raiders are flying the same way? I bet they're running low and need to refuel soon." Yoon-ji pulled up star charts and began calculating fuel consumption rates for Krillian ships. If Taehyun was right, the raiders would have to break off their attacks and head for a supply depot within the next few hours. She cross-referenced known Krillian bases with the raiders' current position and flight patterns. There were 3 possible refueling points, but only one made tactical sense. There, she said, highlighting a location on the star map. Asteroid mining station in the Kepler belt. They need fuel, that's where they'll go. Hyan-Wu studied. Her analysis. You're suggesting we ignore the raiders and position ourselves at this mining station? Based on Tae-Hein's observation, yes. If he's correct about their fuel situation, we can catch them when they're most vulnerable. It was a huge gamble, if Tae-Hein was wrong. The raiders would continue attacking merchant ships, while the Ghost Talons waited at an empty mining station. But if he was right, they could end the pirate problem with one decisive strike. We'll do it, Hyan-Wu decided. But if this goes wrong, I'm blaming both of you. 3 hours later, the Ghost Talons waited in the shadow of a large asteroid near the mining station. Their fighters were powered down to minimum levels, nearly invisible against the rocky background. Yoonji monitored long-range sensors from the command ship. Watching for any sign of approaching vessels, Tae-Han had brought extra snacks for the wait. He shared sweet potato chips with So-Young while they discussed the differences between military and civilian flight training. Junho and Minsu played cards on their cockpit displays. Everyone tried to stay relaxed while they waited to see if their cargo pilot's intuition was correct. Contact, Yoonji announced suddenly.
Ow!
The tactical display lit up with incoming vessels. 6 Krillian raiders, flying in the same formation they had been using to attack merchant convoys. But now they were heading straight for the mining station. Told you they needed gas? Tae-Hein said cheerfully. The raiders approached the station without any caution. They're expecting a simple refueling stop, not an ambush by elite human fighters. Their weapons were powered down, their shields at minimum strength. All units, attack pattern Delta, Hyan-Wu commanded. Take them while they're vulnerable. Ghost Talon struck like lightning from the darkness. Their surprise was complete. The Krillian ships had no time to raise shields or return fire. Within minutes, all 6 raiders were either destroyed or disabled. But the real prize was what they found at the mining station itself. Holy Stars, So-Young whispered over the com. Look at the size of that fleet, hidden behind the asteroid. Were dozens of Krillian ships, supply vessels, troop transports, and heavily armed cruisers. An entire invasion fleet that had been using the mining station as a secret base. This wasn't a pirate raid, Yoonji realized. It was advanced scouting for a major offensive. The fleet was caught completely off guard. Most of their ships were powered down for maintenance. Their crews were resting between missions. They had never expected human fighters to find their hidden base. The Ghost Talons called for reinforcements and began systematic attacks on the enemy fleet. It took 6 hours to destroy or capture every Krillian vessel at the station. Battle was over. They had eliminated an entire invasion force that could have devastated human shipping lanes. All because Tae-Hein had noticed that the raiders were flying like fuel-conscious cargo pilots instead of aggressive pirates. Admiral Chang reviewed the battle reports with amazement. One casual observation from their snack-loving pilot had led to the destruction of a major enemy fleet. It was the kind of intelligence victory that could change the course of the war. How did he know? She asked Yoonji during their debrief. He thinks like a civilian, Yoonji explained. He sees patterns that military minds miss because we're trained to look for tactical threats, not logistical problems. Tae-Han looks at enemy ships and sees transportation issues, fuel concerns, supply chain difficulties. The Admiral nodded, slowly. And those civilian insights give him a completely different perspective on enemy behavior. Exactly. Where we see military formations, he sees shipping routes and delivery schedules. It's like having a completely different way of reading the battlefield. Admiral Chang made another decision. I want more pilots like him. Start recruiting from the merchant, marine, and cargo services. We need people who understand logistics and supply chains. The war was about to change in ways no one could predict. Captain Dongman stood on the bridge of his battlecruiser Determination, watching another disaster unfold on his tactical display. The 3rd Human Squadron this week had walked straight into an alien ambush. 12 of humanity's best pilots were now floating debris in the void, their fighters torn apart by enemy weapons they never saw coming.
Howdy.
How did they know we were coming? His tactical officer asked, her voice tight with frustration. Dongman studied the battle recordings for the 100th time. The human squadron had followed perfect military doctrine. Their formation was textbook. Their approach vector was optimal. Their attack pattern was exactly what the Academy taught, and the aliens had been waiting for them. They're reading our playbook, Dongman realized. Every move we make follows standard military tactics. The enemy has figured out our patterns. 3 months ago, the war had been going perfectly for humanity. Human pilots were destroying alien fleets with clockwork precision. Every battle followed the same formula: superior training and discipline, defeating alien desperation and chaos. Now the aliens were turning that predictability against them. Enemy commanders had studied human tactics until they could predict every move. They knew exactly where human fighters would attack, exactly how they would maneuver, exactly when they would retreat. The war that had seemed so easy was becoming a nightmare. Captain Dongman called an emergency meeting of his wing commanders. The briefing room filled with tired officers who had watched too many good pilots die in the past few weeks. Everyone knew the situation was getting worse, but nobody had solutions. "We need to change our approach," Dongman announced.
Ow!
"Our standard tactics are compromised. The enemy knows what we're going to do before we do it." Commander Lee nodded. Grimly, intelligence reports that alien forces have captured several of our tactical manuals. They're teaching our own strategies to their pilots. "So what do we do?" asked Commander Park. "Throw out 30 years of military doctrine and start over?" That's when Squadron Leader Hyan-Woo raised his hand. "Sir, I have a suggestion." "It might sound crazy, but I think we should let Pilot Taehan lead a mission." The room fell silent. Everyone had heard about the Ghost Talons and their unusual new pilot, a cargo driver who spotted invisible battleships while eating snacks alone. The civilian, who thought like a factory worker instead of a soldier. "Explain your reasoning," Captain Dongman said carefully. Hyan-Woo stood up, choosing his words with care. "Taehyun doesn't think like a military pilot because he isn't one. He doesn't follow doctrine because he doesn't know doctrine. When he looks at a tactical situation, he sees something completely different than what we see." "And you think that's an advantage?" Commander Lee asked skeptically. "I think it's exactly what we need," Hyan-Woo replied. "The aliens have learned to counter military thinking, but they can't counter something they don't understand." Captain Dongman considered the proposal. It was desperate, probably stupid, and definitely against regulations. But desperate times called for desperate measures. "What kind of mission did you have in mind?" Hyan-Woo pulled up a star chart on the briefing room display. "Supply convoy? Escort through the Helix Nebula. Intelligence says it's a low-risk run. Light pirate activity at most. Perfect for testing unconventional tactics without risking major assets." The mission looked routine on paper. 12 cargo ships carrying rare earth minerals from the mining colonies to the inner worlds. Standard escort duty that any competent pilot could handle. But Dongman had learned not to trust routine missions. "What's the cargo?" "Processed duratanium and quantum crystals," Hyan-Woo replied. "Essential materials for starship construction." Dongmin felt his stomach tighten. Those materials were incredibly valuable not just to humans but to aliens as well. Any enemy force that captured the convoy would gain a significant strategic advantage. "This feels like bait," he said slowly. That's exactly what Taehan said when he reviewed the mission parameters. Hyan-Woo admitted 2 days later, Taehan sat in the squadron briefing room, sharing a bag of sweet potato chips with Yoonji. While they studied the convoy route, the path through the Helix Nebula looked straightforward enough. 3 days of travel through relatively safe space. "Too straightforward," Taehan muttered around a mouthful of chips. "This whole thing feels like a setup." Yoonji had learned to take his intuition seriously. "What kind of setup?" "Not for us," Taehan explained, offering her the chip bag. "For the convoy. Look at this route. It's too convenient, too obvious. It's like someone's herding those cargo ships into a specific area." He pointed at the star chart with a chip. "See how the safe travel lanes all converge right here in the middle of the nebula? If I wanted to ambush a convoy, that's exactly where I'd wait." Yoonji cross-referenced shipping manifests with strategic intelligence reports. The cargo was indeed valuable enough to justify a major enemy operation, and the Helix Nebula's dense gas clouds would hide an entire fleet from most sensors. "It's not pirates," she realized. It's a full battle group waiting in ambush. The Ghost Talons received their mission briefing the next morning. Captain Dongmin had decided to let Taehaeon take the lead, with Hyan Wu flying as his wingman and tactical advisor. It was the first time in military history that a cargo pilot would command an elite fighter squadron. Your mission is to escort the convoy safely through the nebula, Dongmin explained. But you have complete freedom to use whatever tactics you think are necessary. Taehaeon raised his hand. What if my tactics look really weird and don't make sense to anyone else? Then you better hope they work, Dongmin replied, as the squadron prepared for launch. Hyan Wu felt nervous in a way he hadn't experienced since his first combat mission. For 2 years he had relied on training, discipline, and proven tactics. Now he was trusting his life to a pilot who thought battles were like factory quality control problems. Are you sure about this? Sayoung asked as they walked to their fighters. No, Hyan Wu admitted. But I'm sure that what we've been doing isn't working anymore. Taehaeon climbed into his cockpit with his usual casual demeanor, a bag of mixed nuts tucked into his flight suit pocket. He ran through his pre-flight checklist while humming a popular song from the civilian entertainment networks. Ghost Talons, this is Control, came the voice from the flight deck. You are cleared for launch. Good luck out there. The fighters launched into space in loose formation, with Taehaeon's ship taking the lead position. Behind them, the convoy of cargo ships began their journey toward the Helix Nebula, their holds full of materials that could determine the outcome of the war. Taehaeon opened a bag of nuts and settled in for the flight. This is going to be interesting, he said over the comm. Hope everyone's ready for some really unconventional flying. Hyan Wu hoped they were ready too. The future of human space might depend on whatever crazy plan was forming in their cargo. Pilots mined in the depths of the Helix Nebula. Alien sensors detected the approaching convoy. Hundreds of enemy ships powered up their weapons and prepared for battle. They had studied human escort tactics for months, planning the perfect ambush. They had no idea what was coming for them. The Helix Nebula stretched before them like a glowing cloud of purple and gold gas. Beautiful and deadly, the dense stellar formation could hide entire fleets from conventional sensors. Taehaeon flew point position, leading the Ghost Talons through the swirling cosmic mists while munching on trail mix. Standard escort formation would put us in a defensive box around the convoy, Hyan Wu said over the comm, falling back into his instructor role. That way we can respond to attacks from any direction. Sounds boring, Taehaeon replied, banking his fighter toward a cluster of gas pockets. Plus, if I can predict what we're supposed to do, so can the bad guys. Instead of flying protective patterns around the cargo ships, Taehaeon led his squadron on what looked like random patrol routes throughout the nebula. To anyone watching, it appeared chaotic and inefficient. The human fighters seemed to wander aimlessly through the gas clouds, sometimes splitting up, sometimes regrouping, never following any recognizable tactical doctrine. What exactly are we doing? Minsu asked after an hour of seemingly pointless flying. Exploring, Taehaeon said cheerfully, and making sure nobody's hiding in here waiting to surprise our convoy friends, deep within the nebula's densest regions. Admiral Vexstar watched the human fighters through his fleet's long-range sensors. The alien commander had spent months studying human escort tactics, preparing the perfect ambush for this valuable convoy. His battle group consisted of over 300 ships, hidden in the sensor shadows of the nebula's most massive gas formations. Destroyers, cruisers, and his flagship dreadnought waited in carefully planned positions, ready to spring their trap when the convoy entered the kill zone. But the human escorts were behaving strangely. Instead of maintaining proper defensive formation, they seemed to be flying random patterns throughout the nebula. Their movements made no tactical sense. Are they lost? Asked his tactical officer, studying the erratic flight paths. Humans don't get lost, Vexstar replied. They're either incompetent, or this is some new strategy we haven't seen before. He decided it didn't matter. Incompetent or not, the human fighters would be destroyed when his fleet revealed itself. Convoy would be captured and the valuable cargo would help fuel the alien war machine. Vexstar settled back in his command chair to wait. Patience was a virtue he had learned during 30 years of warfare. The humans would enter his traps soon enough. Meanwhile, Tahian continued his apparently random patrol pattern, sharing snacks with his squadron mates over the cum while pointing out interesting gas formations and stellar phenomena. To his fellow pilots, it looked like he was treating the mission like a sightseeing tour. "Pretty colors over there," he commented, steering toward a cluster of ionized particles. "Yonji, are you getting good sensor readings from all these different areas?" "Excellent readings," Yonji replied from the command ship. "We're mapping the entire nebula structure. But I'm also detecting some unusual energy signatures." "What kind of signatures?" Yanwu asked. "The kind that suggests we're not alone." "In here?" she said carefully. Taehun nodded as if he had expected this news. "Yeah, I figured. Too many spots where the gas patterns look disrupted, like big ships have been sitting in them for a while." Over the next 2 hours, the Ghost Talons continued their wandering patrol pattern. But Yunji began to notice that Taehyun's seemingly random movements were actually creating a three-dimensional map of hidden enemy positions. Each time he flew toward an interesting gas cloud, his sensors detected concealed alien vessels. "He's not patrolling randomly," she realized. "He's positioning us." The convoy finally approached the nebula's central region, where Admiral Vexstar had prepared his ambush. The cargo ships moved in tight formation, their captains nervous about the dense gas clouds that surrounded them. "All enemy vessels, prepare for synchronized attack," Vexstar commanded. "Strike when the convoy reaches the center point." Of alien ships began powering up their weapons and engines. The trap was about to be sprung. That's when Taeyeon's voice crackled over the human cum network. "Okay, everyone. Party time. Execute Pattern Chaos 7. "Pattern Chaos 7? Junho asked. "What the hell is Pattern Chaos 7? "The one where we attack everything at once from everywhere at once," Taehan explained, unwrapping a granola bar. "Just like we practiced, sort of." They had never practiced any such pattern. But somehow, the Ghost Talons understood what he meant. The alien fleet revealed itself in a massive coordinated strike. Hundreds of ships emerging from concealment simultaneously should have been the perfect ambush, catching the human convoy completely by surprise. Instead, found themselves surrounded. Taehyun's wandering patrol. Patton had positioned human fighters throughout the entire nebula. Every time he had flown toward an interesting gas cloud, he had actually been placing his pilots at precise attack positions. What looked like chaos was actually the most complex three-dimensional formation in military history. The aliens suddenly faced human fighters attacking from above, below, and all sides simultaneously. Their carefully planned formation became a liability as enemy. Fire came from every direction at once. But Taehyun's real genius wasn't in the positioning, it was in the targeting. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy their biggest ships," he announced over the comm while taking a bite of his granola bar. "We're trying to break their supply chain." While Admiral Vexstar expected attacks on his dreadnought and heavy cruisers, the human fighters focused on completely different targets. Fuel tankers, ammunition carriers, repair ships, and communication vessels. All the unglamorous support craft that kept a fleet operational. "What are they doing?" Vexstar's tactical officer asked in confusion. "They're ignoring our battle cruisers. They're treating us like a manufacturing process," Vexstar realized with growing horror. "They're attacking our critical failure points." Within 20 minutes, the mighty alien armada was stranded without fuel, ammunition, or the ability to communicate between ships. Their powerful weapons were useless without energy to fire them. Their advanced tactics meant nothing without the ability to coordinate movements. The Ghost Talons methodically disabled ship after ship, turning what should have been a massacre into the largest capture of enemy vessels in the war's history. The aliens who had planned to destroy a human convoy instead found themselves prisoners, their fleet crippled by attacks on systems they had never thought to defend. Admiral Vexstar sat in his powerless command chair, watching his tactical display go dark as his ship's systems failed one by one. 30 years of military experience had not prepared him for an enemy who treated space battles like quality control problems. "How?" he asked the darkness. In his fighter, Taehyun finished his granola bar and began looking for his next snack. "That went pretty well," he said cheerfully. "Anyone want to grab lunch when we get back to base?" The convoy continued safely through the nebula, its cargo intact, and its escort mission complete. Behind them, 300 alien warships drifted, helplessly in space, victims of the most unconventional military strategy ever devised. The war was about to change forever. 6 months after the Helix Nebula incident, the entire galaxy had changed. The Terran Defense Corps established a new training facility on Luna Station, where former cargo pilots taught space combat to military officers. On anyone involved, Admiral Chang walked through the main training hall, watching groups of pilots huddle around holographic displays. Instead of studying traditional attack formations, they analyzed shipping manifests and supply chain diagrams. Instead of memorizing weapon specifications, they learned about industrial logistics and quality control processes. Who would have thought, Chang said to squadron leader Haiyan Wu, who now served as the facility's director, that the key to winning an interstellar war was thinking like factory workers and truck drivers. Haiyan Wu smiled as he watched Taihon lead a class of eager students. The former cargo pilot still wore his flight suit too large and still brought snacks to every meeting. But his insights had revolutionized human space combat in ways that military academies had never imagined. Huyan Wu explained. They never prepared to fight civilians who happened to be flying military spacecraft. In Training Room 7, Taihyan stood before a group of 20 pilots, sharing a bag of mixed nuts, while explaining his latest tactical theory. The students included veteran squadron leaders, academy graduates recruited from various non-military professions. The thing about space battles, Taihyan said, offering nuts to the front row, is that most people think they're about shooting and being shot at, but really, they're about logistics. Gosh. Every ship needs fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and food. For the crew, take away any of those things, and the most powerful warship becomes a very expensive piece of junk. A young pilot raised her hand. But sir, what about heavily defended supply convoys? Sometimes the support ships are just as well protected as the battle cruisers. Taihyan nodded thoughtfully. Good question. Anyone want to take a guess? Older pilot who used to manage planetary shipping routes spoke up. You don't attack the convoy, you attack the infrastructure that supports the convoy. Fuel depots, manufacturing plants, shipping schedules. Exactly, Taihyan said, beaming. With pride. Hit the system, not the symptom. It's like when a conveyor belt breaks down. You don't fix it by hitting the belt with a hammer. You figure out what's causing the problem and fix that instead. The students scribbled notes furiously. These unconventional lessons had become the most requested courses in the military. Every pilot wanted to learn how to think like Taihyan, though few had his natural talent for seeing patterns that others missed. Down the hall, Pilot Officer Yunji briefed a group of intelligence analysts on the latest enemy activities. Job had evolved from studying Taihyan's methods to coordinating a network of civilian trained military officers throughout the fleet. Current reports indicate that alien forces are struggling to adapt to our new tactical approaches, she announced. To the crowded briefing room. Their commanders are trained to counter military thinking, but they don't understand civilian logic. She pulled up a star chart showing recent battle locations. In the past month, we've seen 3 major enemy fleets abandon their positions after encounters with our hybrid-trained squadrons. They're not just losing battles anymore. They're becoming confused and demoralized. The analysts studied the data with fascination. Traditional military victories followed predictable patterns. Enemy forces would retreat, regroup, and return, with better strategies. But these new defeats seem to break something fundamental in alien military thinking. They don't know how to fight chaos, one analyst observed. Their entire command structure is based on order and predictability. Which is exactly what makes our approach so effective, Yunji confirmed. We're not just using different tactics, using a completely different way of thinking about warfare. Meanwhile, in the Fleet Command Center, Captain Dongmin reviewed the latest strategic reports. The war that had seemed so difficult 6 months ago was now turning decisively in humanity's favor. But not through superior technology or overwhelming force. The hegemony has requested another ceasefire negotiation, his communications officer reported. That's the 3rd request this month. Dongmin was not surprised. The alien coalition that had once seemed invincible was now fragmenting under the pressure of facing an enemy they could not understand or predict. Their fleets were intact, their weapons still functioned, but their will to fight was crumbling. "Any word on their specific terms?" he asked. They want to discuss territorial boundaries and trade agreements. No mention of surrender, but they're clearly looking for a way to end the conflict. The aliens had learned to counter human military science, but they could not counter human chaos. The beautiful, productive chaos of minds that refused to follow established rules and instead found completely unexpected solutions to impossible problems. Back in the training facility, Tehan finished his lecture and began packing up his teaching materials. Students lingered, asking questions about supply chain analysis and pattern recognition techniques. Answered each question patiently while sharing the remainder of his snacks. Professor Tehan called out a pilot who used to work as a mining engineer. "Do you think the war will actually end soon?" Tehan considered the question while closing his bag of nuts. "I think the aliens are getting tired of losing to cargo. Pilots and factory workers? Fighting an enemy you can't predict is exhausting. Eventually, they'll decide it's easier to be friends than enemies." As the students filed out of the classroom, Hyan Wu approached his former pilot. "Any regrets about leaving the ghost talons for teaching?" "It's not really," Tehan replied. "I miss the flying sometimes. But this is more important. We're not just training better pilots. We're changing how people think about problems." Outside the training facility's windows, Luna's surface stretched toward the Earth, rising above the horizon.
No.
Both worlds were safe. Now, protected by fleets of ships crewed by pilots who had learned to think like civilians, fight like soldiers, and solve problems like engineers. The galaxy was vast and full of potential conflicts. But humanity had discovered something more powerful than any weapon. They had learned that the best way to win a war was to refuse to fight it the way their enemies expected. And sometimes, the most important victories came not from following the rules, but from sharing snacks with fellow travelers and noticing. When things didn't look quite right, Admiral Chang stood in her office, reading the final intelligence report of the day. 3 more alien fleets had withdrawn from human space. 2 enemy commanders had requested direct negotiations. 1 entire star system had declared neutrality rather than continue fighting. The war was ending not with a bang, but with confused alien admirals trying to figure out why their perfectly planned strategies kept being defeated by humans who treated space battles like quality control inspections. She smiled and closed the report. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but humanity was ready for them. It learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the best weapon against order was a little bit of organized chaos, delivered with a smile and a shared snack. The universe would never be quite the same.